I have the feeling that there are people who looked at this topic today and said, well, that doesn't apply to my business. I'm a lawyer, or I'm a this, or I'm a that, and so this won't work with my business. I can't, I can't do this. I can't make something that produces revenue out of what I do. And so my goal today is to change the way you think. So if you've worked with me before, I say to my clients, if I can change the way you think, it will change the way you behave even before you have mastered the skill sets to fully implement what we're talking about. So my goal today is to change the way you think and to not overwhelm you. Because sometimes we come into these meetings, we're going to talk about how to do something in my business, and or you read a book like E-Myth and you go, oh my gosh, I haven't done so many of the things. You know, look at all the, I don't even have a business because I've done everything backwards. And sometimes we look at these things and we feel overwhelmed. You know, this is what I have to do to be successful. And I have to tell you that feeling overwhelmed doesn't serve anybody, because when you're overwhelmed, there's this level of stress that you have, and then you don't function optimally. Now, all of you in here, even if you weren't sure if this applies to your business or not, all of you do this every day. And so I want to change the way you think. I want you to look at your business a little differently. I want you to look at some other areas in your life and see where you're already doing this, so that you can learn how to apply this to your business, so you can become not only more efficient, but more effective, and that you won't leave money on the table. Let's see, which way does it go? Okay, and so that's what we're going to talk about first, is leaving money on the table. When you do something once, it's a project. This is the whole statement about this class. When you do it more than once, it has the possibility to become a process. And if you continue to repeat that process, because it produces value to your business or to your clients, then that process has the potential to become a revenue producing product. And when I say product, I'm not saying that it's necessarily a tangible product like my clicker is here, one that I can touch. It could be. But what I mean by a product, service, however you want to do that, is it has the potential to become something that produces additional revenue. Okay? The challenge for many businesses is that they repeat projects again and again and again. They reinvent the wheel every time, and they never optimize the intellectual capital that they have. They leave money on the table. So, you may be saying, well, I'm a CPA and I do this, or I'm a lawyer and I do this, or I'm a this and I do that, and this would never work for my business. So I'm going to challenge you to see where the money is. So it's a journey on how we think. How do we think differently, and what really is a possibility? There was an article that the girl who handles our social media for our bar camp, Sarasota Bradenton group, put this article up, and I went to it, and it's, so if you go to our Facebook page, it's on there, and it's about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And a fixed mindset tends to look at things as there is a lack or a limit. Now, it's not just seeing the cup as half empty or half full, okay? And a growth mindset is about the journey and change. And so they give some examples of even when you have 4 or 5-year-olds. So 4 or 5-year-old does a puzzle, and a fixed mindset is all about the performance and having to be good. And so if they have a chance to do another puzzle and they're going to be rated, the one with the fixed mindset will choose the puzzle that they've already done because they know that they will do well on it. And it's all about how well they perform. Where the person with a growth mindset, even though somebody's going to look at them, will say, well, I've already done that puzzle. Give me a new one. They're not afraid to make mistakes, because as long as I'm learning from my mistakes, I'm growing and I'm becoming more. So, what is a project? Each one is different, and most of the time we make it up as we go. So I'm working with Joe on a couple of things, and he does printing. He works with clients and helps them in their print process. For most clients that he works with, they come to Joe and they want to get something done for that client. They feel that they are completely original. When people come to me, and as a business, and I say I want to do an assessment on their business, some of them are like, no, you couldn't possibly, I'm different than everybody else. I have to tell you, after doing assessments on businesses across many different aspects of industry, from public to private sector, I've worked in Disney-like animatronics, disaster mitigation recovery, selling construction attachments. I have a client that sells dirt. Huge truckloads of dirt, hundreds of truckloads of dirt. And people say, well, that business is completely different than this company over here that does web design. But the truth is at the essence of these, and Richard showed us last week with the business model canvas, at the essence of our business, there are similar components. So the challenge with the project is, for most of us, each one is different, and we're starting from scratch. However, you work on projects every day, and you take these projects and you work them as a process. Now, some people are better at than others, or there may be areas of your life that are better than others. So I have a toolbox. My kids have art supplies. I have a sewing box. Does anybody have any hobbies like that? Mm-hmm. So if you sew, you tend to have a box, a basket, and depending on how much you sew, like my mom is a seamstress, she has a whole room dedicated to this. And she has patterns in a certain area. She has her thread in a certain area. And when she goes to create a garment, does she, even though she may make a little girl's dress this time, and another time she may make a suit, there is, each one is different, but isn't there a similarity in what she does? Okay, you don't start sewing before you cut the fabric. And you don't, and if you're good, you generally wash the fabric before you start. And then there's fine details, like my mom will say, it's not so much about how you sew, but it's ironing as you go. Real people that are really good iron as they go. She tells me that the iron that she bought, like in the 1980 something, she spent like $60 or $70 on an iron. I mean, we look at that now, and go, wow, it's a $30 iron, it's a $150 iron. What's the difference in an iron? For somebody who's really good, everything. Most of us have processes that we work at, or projects that we work as processes every day. You probably have a system when you get up in the morning. Your alarm goes off. Maybe you get up, you put the coffee on. You don't think every morning about, well, you may think about what you're going to wear, but you don't think about, am I going to wash my face first, or am I going to brush my teeth? Am I going to blow dry my hair first? You have a system on how you do that, don't you? So what we want to do is we want to take these areas of your life that this is how you behave, and we want to bring this to your business and see how that works. So efficiency. What we're going to do is, there's paper on your tables, and we're going to identify a couple of pieces, and one of the things we're going to talk about is clearly defining and implementing a project. Okay? And then I have two of my favorite things up here: scope of work, or statement of work, and scope creep. Is anybody familiar with that term, scope creep? Okay. So most of you probably are familiar with that term, but maybe not stated that way. So let's see, what does that turn into? When you have children, what happens is you think that this is what's going to happen with your child. And then the child comes home and says, well, I have to go to a birthday party and I need this. And then, getting ready for back to school is a great example. You think they need this, but then the teacher sends another note home and you need this, and you need this, and you need this. And maybe you allotted a few minutes to go and do this because that's all it was supposed to take. And what happens? It turns into this thing. Right. 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 You know what? And my daughter's a junior in high school, and I still don't get the notes. You know, it's good when the parents talk together because it grows into something. Now the challenge is if you're working on a project because they're one-offs and you have a certain amount of money that you got paid, and this project has grown well beyond what you expected. Most of the time you make a whole lot less money than you thought. Or you have to go back to that client and you have to say, well, this is what it is, so you need to pay me more. And then what type of feeling does that give?
The worst words that a client can say are, it would be nice if, because they're suggesting something new that you wouldn't want.
Right. So as a solutions architect, when the client comes back, it would be nice if. And you've already defined, you already knew what this project was. They've already started to make payments or they paid you for it. And now the project, it turns into the project that is a nightmare. Okay, so what we're going to look at your table is I want you to take a piece of paper and I want you to write down 3 things that you do in your company. 3 things that you do. 3 things you do in your company. And underneath that, I want you to write down 2 things that you do as a hobby or as a practice that you do regularly. Maybe you ride a bike, maybe you go to yoga class, maybe you sew, paint, work on cars, play music. We're going to start with the hobby pieces because the hobby pieces are things that you're not scared of. When we look at our business, it can become overwhelming. So who has a hobby besides the paint and sew and my toolbox one? Does anybody have a, what do you have on there, James?
Longboarding.
Longboarding. Okay, so
You still want
you have to, what is longboarding?
It's a long skateboard usually used for hills or in Florida parking garages.
Okay. Okay. So now his is, we're going to say that how many tools are needed how many things do you need to be able to longboard?
A helmet, shoes, a longboard, and usually a little T-tool to be able to tighten certain parts of the board.
Have you ever gone to do that and not had one of the things with you?
Yes.
Yes.
Wear gloves and knee pads and things
Depending on if it's in a parking garage or not.
Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot of things that are necessary for him to do what he wants to do, are there? But there are times that he's gone to do that and he hasn't had everything that he's needed. Okay? Have you ever worked on a project like that? I don't know if anybody put honeydews or fix-it-uppers on their list, but a great example of a project that works poorly is, have you ever gone to do something at your house and you get home and you think you have all the things, so maybe you have the paint and you have all these things, and then man, I knew I had a paint roller. And you go, I don't have any paint rollers. And then how many people have made more than one trip to Home Depot or Lowe's on a weekend?
Oh, you didn't need them both.
Plumbing's at least a 3-trip.
Right.
I have an office there.
You have an office there? See, so James knows, okay, have you ever gone to use your longboard and And even though you didn't have all the tools that you needed, went ahead and went to enjoy that anyway.
Yes.
And have you ever regretted doing that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Don't go longboarding barefoot.
Okay. Okay. So you probably now, before you go, think about what you're going to take.
There is a checklist, yes.
Yes, there is a checklist. Does anybody else have, besides my do-it-yourself? I love the fact that Bernie has an office at Home Depot. Does anybody else have a thing they do personally? Yes, Richard.
Well, I'll give an example of a gentleman I worked with in the ancient past who was a plumber, did swimming pool plumbing. And he would get halfway through a job and said, man, I need a 45-degree, 2.5-inch thing. I'll go to the store and get one. He would come back, there goes an hour, and he'd go another 20 feet and say, wow, I need a T. He'd go to the store and get one. And then at the end, he complained that he just wasn't making any money. So he said, why not?
See, because he doesn't even run projects well. So before we can turn something into a revenue producing product, we have to look at what are the projects that we do well. What are the things that we do well? When does it work? James has learned that he has a checklist. Okay. Personally, does anybody else have another? Yes.
So this morning I started thinking about getting the canoe out and going camping. Oh boy, there's a long checklist for that one. You gotta have all the right stuff and in the right bags and all the right tie downs and don't forget your paddle. And it's just you screw up and it can ruin the whole trip. If you don't take something along, don't have a break with it.
So.
And now I've got storage unit and it's like where's all my stuff?
So I am the organizer queen, and I have to tell you, I think every organizer person has at least one junk drawer, at least one. We all have places of our life that are not organized. We all have those secret things that chase us. We all have certain bad habits. Mine is clearing my voicemail box out on my phone. That it's a bad habit.
Yeah, but your junk drawer is a form of organizing. Otherwise, it'd be scattered all over the place. So you have one organized place to put all your junk in.
The junk drawer to me is like this space where we put the things that we don't want to deal with. I don't want to throw it away, and you know what? I'm really okay with that because in my life, it's all right to have some place that I put things that I don't want to deal with, and if it's an old this or scrap that or whatever, then that's fairly safe because it's not a bag full of IRS bills or something that's painful. But all of us have different things. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to run projects effectively. Okay? So when I go to Home Depot, when I go to wherever, I have to think, what do I really need? I have a client I was working with last week, and he's getting ready to launch a software application. And in this launch, he has to, he's made a phone call, he's looked at this thing, and he's had a conversation, and now he's gotten an email from the company, and he's going to have to get back with them, he's going to have to pay them, he's going to have to get this content together because it's a software platform that they're going to populate content. He's going to need to talk to his virtual admin, and but so we're looking at this, and he's telling me all these things that he has to do. And one of the problems that we have when we're looking at projects and being efficient is we have these things that are like junk drawers in our life, and I'm going to call them lists. Okay? How many people in here have really long lists or make lists? So one of the problems in lists, and Stan and I had this conversation this morning, and this client periodically will be working on something, and I'll say, send the email now. He's like, well, we're in the middle. I'm like, send this now, and while we're working on these other things, this other person will be taking action on this. It's kind of like at my house, what I really love is I have a dishwasher, I have a washing machine, I have a dryer, I have an oven, and if I plan it right, all of those things can be working, and I could be sitting out on my back porch talking to one of my friends on the phone, right? And they're all working for me. So in a when we're gonna use a list, but I don't want to use my list as a junk drawer. I want to use my list to take things out of my head and to be able to capture those things so that I don't miss pieces. The other thing, which is my pet peeve, is this thing, too much technology. So I told you today I was going to talk to you about how you think. And there are people that will say that you absolutely must be paperless. There are people that will tell you all kinds of things. You must, you must, you must. You only need to be efficient and effective. If you are paperless and not effective, then it doesn't matter. Right now we have a lot of very large projects that we're working on. And we, on a weekly basis, have a whiteboard meeting. We take a picture of our whiteboard, we would print those off, and we would work with them. But I have to tell you, to deal with all the different things that we have now, we have a smaller whiteboard, about half this size, and it is covered top to bottom in print about this big. And then, before each of us, because there's 2 predominant team members in our company, we have small boards that have the key items that we have to work on. And when we're done, we'll go find them on the big board, which is the brain dump, and mark them off. Now, we have taken pictures and we've worked from lists, but I have to tell you, in our world, who's seen the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy? Okay, you haven't seen it. Okay, write it down. This is your homework before now and the next session that we have. It's called The Gods Must Be Crazy. And what it talks about is it contrasts this little African bushman and the simplicity of his life, and not too far away, what happens as somebody in, and I don't remember which city it was, but it's a city in South Africa, and the alarm clock goes off, and the alarm clock and the coffee maker and this, and they get in the car, and they're contrasting the fact of this very advanced and civilized life and the craziness of it. How many people have all kinds of technology tools at their disposal? Do you fully utilize any of them? No. And then I have one of my clients who's like, I have to do this. And so then he, and I watched him do this with several other tools, and I'm like, so what's the learning curve? People have been selling property, buying and selling property for many years, and some things have been hugely instrumental. The MLS was awesome because it automated those tools. But life, when you're going to look at a project, is so often we make it so complex. We make life hard. What I love about the basis of looking at a project are what are the key components, and let's look to simplify those. And it's really important when we go to move a project to a process and then something that makes money to be able to simplify it. And understand what are the key components, what are the things that we go through again and again. So I would challenge you to think about the technology that you have and say, do I really need all of this? Do I really need, it's kind of like when we look at that people are starting to build houses that are a little bit smaller. We had a certain size house, and then we're building huge houses. And the larger your house is, the more stuff that it takes to fill it, and the more time it takes to take care of those things. And then your house isn't big enough to hold all the things that you have, so now you have to have a storage unit So I want to challenge you as we go to look at this project. What really needs to be in there to be efficient and effective? Do I really need all of this? Does it really provide value to my client? And let's go for the things that really do provide value to our clients. Real relationships, real connections with real people who are authentic. We're having to do a lot of speaking now for one of the projects that we're working on, and so we're speaking at Kiwanis groups. We're speaking at we'll be speaking at the Yes group next week. We'll be chambers of commerce, and most people would insist that we should probably have a PowerPoint. How many people have spoken at a number of groups that meet in restaurants or various small buildings or rooms? Okay. Should I count on them having screens or big screen TVs or power cords? So if I create a presentation that only works on PowerPoint, then I'm going to be challenged. I'm going to have a projector. Have you ever had that? Oh my gosh, we have to have a projector and do, right? So what we did is I went to Staples, and you may go to any other similar type office store. And have you seen the giant Post-it note pads? We got a giant Post-it note pad. And we took our presentation and we used some images and we put it on this giant Post-it note pad, which means that when we are at the Yes group next week, it doesn't matter. We can simply use images to highlight what we're talking about, and I don't have to count on being able to plug in. Technology should be used when it leverages what I need to do. But if I'm trying to use technology next week in the meeting room at the super buffet, I'm going to be challenged because I'm going to need power cords, I'm going to need to bring my own projector, I'm going to need to bring my own screen, I'm going to need to get there super early and set it up, hope nobody trips over that. Is that leveraging my time and effort? Probably not. So we're going to start to talk about your projects. Now, who has a good business, a good thing that you put on there that you'd like to share that you do in your business? Because I asked you to put 3 things for your business. Anybody want to share one of the things you do in your business?
I do product research.
You do product research. Good. And how do you feel about the product research that you do? Is there a similarity, or how do you do that?
Well, we have our resources where we can get our products from. We can supply them.
Okay. So you're looking for, in product research, we're looking at sourcing.
Being able to compare the products, make sure like flash drives, 4 gigabyte, 8 gigabyte styles.
So you look at styles, you compare, probably value, price,
How quickly they can do it.
time. Okay. So when you do this, do you capture the data in a certain way?
Yes, actually the website has a place where I can grab them, put them off into a specific presentation.
Okay, so you can grab them and put them into presentations,
And then edit it from there.
and you can edit it. Okay. Do you research up and coming things, or are you searching in sites that already have the products all gathered?
Yes, that's what the sites are. The site is.
Okay, so you're searching with a company that's already gathered products together.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the warehouse, they bring all the different suppliers together in one spot.
Okay, so you're searching
It's
through
like
a
having
warehouse.
tool. Right.
Okay. And do you do this for every client? Do you do this for?
To a certain extent, I mean, as I've already done the same products for different clients, of course, I already have already have knowledge of certain products and certain suppliers who can get things for me in certain ways. Like I know if I have to get a rush job, I know which ones can do that, which ones can't from having done it before.
I'm trying to decide how far I want to do your circle here. Because this is a great example of a project. So Tom, when you do this, so you actually, as you're doing this, the goal of your product research is to put this together in a proposal for a client. Great. So for each client, you create a new proposal.
Right.
Okay.
Based on what their needs are.
Based on what their needs are. Oh, too many things. Based on what their needs are. Okay. How many people in here create proposals? Okay. Do you have a template? Okay. Are all your clients the same, Richard?
Sure.
No, his clients are all different. So his clients are different, and he has a base template. And Tom probably has a base template that you use to gather this information in. Okay. We're gonna come back to this because I want to do something cool with it. But if I do it now, then I'll like jump to like 3 places down further in my slide.
I keep on wanting to ask how many proposals that you develop can just be copied and reused and not have to start from scratch or with minor edits.
Good question, Joe.
Well, it depends. Like right now, I'm putting together another a group that's looking for flash drives. I just did one of those last week. Both are rush jobs. Yeah, so actually, I'm using the exact same presentation as far as what the products were, but I have to update it because flash drives prices change daily.
Little tweaks.
But yeah, little tweaks. But yeah, basically, I know the exact same suppliers. So I'm using the last week's presentation, basically.
I gotta love it. Ka-ching.
Yes. Yes. See, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but see, this is bucket 1. We're going to do flash drives in a hurry. So there's common pieces. Wait, you're going to make more money before we finish. Cool. Eric's really happy since he works for Eric. So before we go on to the next piece, let's talk about scope of work or statement of work and scope creep. And a statement of work is, like Tom said, when he sits down with someone, he has a discussion about what their needs are. Okay? Has anybody worked on a project where the client told you what their needs were and the client didn't know what their needs were? And so you defined the project on how you were going to get paid, right? And what you were going to deliver, and then you got into the project. And what was it? It was different. It was different. Does anybody watch any of those? Wow. This Old House.
Yes.
Yes. Right. Or what is it? Homes on Homes. The guy that goes in. Yes. Okay. If you don't know this Old House is they go in and it's a like a classic do-it-yourself. I mean, he was one of the forerunners, and they go in and they redo stuff in old houses. And Homes on Homes is a guy on, I think, on HGTV. And so he actually did remodel projects. But then what happened is he's the guy who does everything right. And so his show became going into places where other people did remodel projects that did everything bad. And so now he's coming in and going, oh my gosh, they didn't put any moisture barriers here underneath the bathroom on the 2nd floor. And you're wondering why your kids are sick, and that's because there's black mold or a whole variety of different things. Has anybody taken on a project that was like that? Mm-hmm. You went in, and on the surface everything looked beautiful, and you got there, and it was horrible. Okay, so inefficiency, as we work on this project, we want to work on defining what we do. So one of the things that I chose to do is assessments. Okay, what typically happens for most of us that do consulting or even sales in a project is, depending on what it is that we're doing, is the project is not at all what we think it is. So I know there were times, has anybody ever spent a lot of time with a client that you didn't get paid for? And to put together something that would be really valuable, and then because you have to do this, you think you have to do this so that you can get the job, and then they end up not doing something.
Or they take the work that you did,
Shop it someplace else. Okay, so I'll tell you what really cured me of this, and this is the scope of work, and it works into the project. And now all of my clients do assessments. I start with an assessment. When you leave working with me and you have an assessment, if you choose not to work with me, that's great. I believe that you got really good value for that, and you pay for that assessment. I have a client that I worked with, and I needed to define what the project was like, and she wanted to know how much it was going to cost to work with me. And it took probably 4 meetings with this person, and then they paid me to do a small portion. And I saw them at a chamber function, this was about 3 years ago, and this person said, I'm still working on the list that you gave me. Has anybody ever done anything like that? Yes. So in defining a project, what we want to do is we want to look at all the pieces, and so that I stay on time. Tom, this is what I'm going to suggest to you. I would suggest that you look at buckets of different types of clients. Okay, you have certain types of clients. So we're going to sort your clients into buckets, and we're going to establish a library of sames and differences. See, the misconception is that to be duplicatable, each item must be the same. That means I must do it exactly the same. But see, if I focus on what the simple things are that are the same in each process, and then the things that are different, I'm going to put them in a library over here. And everything that I create, everything that I do, I'm going to file in a way that I know where to find it. Okay? And so I can reuse it. So an example is my friend Dennis Zink is doing these podcasts for SCORE. He's the incoming chair with Minnesota SCORE. And he asked me to do a networking, a podcast on networking. Well, I've taught on networking a number of times, like I'm teaching on this. So I actually have a handout on networking from, the first one was in 2006. I have it in a file called Speaking under Handouts under Networking. So I created a mission statement for a networking group. I've spoken on this numerous times, and so I took that. And so when I showed up to Dennis's podcast, I had given him the questions. I have a large bio, which I've shortened to 75 words for Dennis, and the 150 that most other people want. And I showed up I gave him, and these are all in a library. So when I need to use any of those, I copy and paste. And I kept that content that was good, that handout on networking with purpose. And I sent it to Dennis, and it gave him something to read so that he knew a little bit more on what my core beliefs were on the subject, and he was able to interact with me. So if you were going to ask me to come and speak on networking, I could go to that file. For me, what a project is this session. So I have a slide here. You guys are going to create some content. We're going to get some feedback. You are going to get some value. I'm going to see what happens with Tom. I'm going to see what happens with Bill the barber. And we're going to take that and we're going to adjust. And we're going to take this content and you're going to file it, and then you're going to use it. So with Tom over here, we have a bucket of people that have flash drives. So to make it short and simple, and because we could go through and take the long route and think about this, or we can do the short and simple one. For time, I'm going to do the short and simple one for Tom. What I would say is Tom has, he's only been with Eric for maybe 4 or 5 months. I would look at the course of what Eric, who Eric predominantly provides promotional items for. And I would create a bucket of people that are looking for maybe by price points, maybe by industry sectors. And I would, not only look at what these people that put warehouses together, because they're putting together warehouses of needs that people, they already know that people want. But how many, now I know some people like coolies, but I'm like, I don't want another coolie. Have you ever gotten some promotional items you're like, what am I going to do with this? Do I want another squeezy ball? No. So I'm looking not to just do what everybody else wants or is doing. I'm looking to be different. You know, one of my favorite promotional item is this mouse pad that cleans my screen, and I carry in my laptop and I put on there when I close it. So it goes between the keys and the screen. I love this. Not one of those big hard ones, it's a pain in the neck. In fact, all you have to do is look at it to know that I use the crud out of this. You know? So I would suggest that you look at the types of people that buy promotional items, and you look at what they typically want, and then you look at what are some of the new and emerging technologies, what's happening in business, how could I solve problems, what are things that people are going to go home with that have my brand name on them that not everybody's doing. How can I bet? Yes.
One of the things I do is, I file things away that I've used. Here's what I did for the last 3 presentations of flash drives. But as I'm working through it, I also keep a research list of things that maybe I won't use on that project, but I could use in the future. So I don't forget where I found a cool idea that I could use next time. I'll offer this person the next time. So it helps me stay organized. It's a form of a list. I'm not using it right now, but I don't want to forget about it.
So I would suggest in Tom's process, and what I started doing, and Richard brought this great piece a couple of months ago. Let's see if I can draw a little better circle here, where both ends meet. Is most of the time we draw flowcharts, which start and end. But what I started doing with my clients after this piece that Richard did the other day is I started making them put things in circles. I have a client that I worked with last week. It was very painful initially to do this project with this circle. But as we pressed through, identifying how this project goes through, how it's the same, we got incredible value. So for Tom, and actually I have to move this down here because I'll look funny writing that far up. We're going to do it down here. Okay? So Tom has research that he does. I would suggest that some of his research is to find out who his buckets are. What are the needs that are going on in those areas? What's happening in technology? What's happening in those industry sectors? Where is the market going? Okay, so he has research that's general. Then he may have research that's specific. So he's sourcing and styling. Where does he, where does this knowledge of products and supplies? And he may come up with something new that maybe these warehouses haven't thought of yet. Maybe somebody's not doing this as a promotional item. Maybe it's not a hat, a coolie, or another mug. I mean, I got to the place, I don't even want more coffee mugs. Has anybody downsized some of the coffee mugs that you got as promotional items? Have you taken them to Goodwill? You can't throw them out because you feel bad, because it's a good, I mean, it's like, and it's not that you don't like the person. Okay? So we get a couple of components here with Tom's project, is because if I don't use that again and again, if I just look at it and I get rid of it, that doesn't matter. I mean, it's a sale for you. It's a sale for your company, but does it really bring value to the client? So I would suggest that we sort this into buckets, that you create some general, because you're right, the price changes, but that you create some general files that are all there. Or maybe you have, depending on what your tools are, maybe you have links. You have the people that have had the best things in flash drives, and you have them all organized into one area. And so when somebody calls you, then you can effectively go, okay, the best people in flash drives are right here. The best are right here. And then you can draw on those. And if you need to spend some more time, you can, but you have a library of A, B, and C's that you have already spent time researching, and so you can produce that again and again, better, faster, quicker. So what we do when we have clients is we sort them into buckets. And we look at, what do I do in my project that is the same? He researches, he identifies the needs of the client, okay? And how are they the same? How are they different? Then he gathers these things into a template. So if you were working on a project for me, I have a cover page, I have an initiation document, I have these pieces, and then I take what I get from you, your needs and desires based on our conversation, and I have a little place in there that's called scope of work. And I define exactly what's going to go into that place, what's included and what's not included. I define how many sessions we'll meet. And so this is all set out. It's got a logo on it, the pages are set, and then I customize it to you, but I don't have to create the document each time. Just like I have a toolbox, with a hammer and a concrete drill bit and all those kind of things that I need to be able to make things go forward. Just like you have a sewing box, just like you have a paint box. Okay? So you gather those together, and as you do this, then you provide more better value to the people that you work with. So what we want to do is we want to go back to the best examples of projects that don't work well. Are like our Home Depot projects. Like Richard's story of the plumber. And we say, when I'm going here, what are the basic tools? If I'm a plumber, what are the basic things that I do again and again and again? What are the specialty pieces? Okay? So if I'm a plumber, I may never know when I'm going to have a specialty job, and I can't carry the ditch witch in the back of my car or in the back of my truck. That's a specialty piece. But I want to make sure that I have those basic tools as a plumber with me all the time, that the specialty pieces, I know where to resource them from. Okay? If I can tell by the call that I get that it's going to be a specialty project, let's say if I get a call on Friday morning and it's going to be a specialty project, I'm probably going to check. I'm going to plan my day so I can make sure that if I need to do this thing, that I can have access to the specialty tool. I'm not going to plan that project at 5 o'clock in the evening and get there and this company closed at 5 o'clock and I got to the job at 5 minutes after 5. I'm going to know where these things are. I'm going to identify in that circle what are the things I'm going to need. If I'm going to paint a room, I'm going to say, when I start, I'm going to start here. I'm going to move furniture. I'm going to need tape. I'm going to identify all those pieces, and that's what you want to look at. The 3 things on your list. You want to look at, do I have all the pieces? Put it into a circle from start to finish. And then the things that are different, we're going to establish in a library. Okay, so one of the examples, because we're still going to meet Bill the barber today. One of the examples of this was my client that sells dirt. She came in, and everything that she did was in her head. Everything that she did was in her head. And the solution to her project, and she couldn't have anybody help her. And she had reached the point where she was making lots of money. I mean, that was not the issue. But everything was in her head, and nobody could help her because it was all in her head. And she couldn't grow her business. And she couldn't turn this project, which was sending dirt someplace, into a process which other people could help her with. And she couldn't add anything else into it and make any more money. So the solution for her was to find a ticket. An order form. You should talk to her. Because we spent 3 weeks redesigning an order form that would be able to put the information in a way that she could communicate it time and time again. Time and time again. So as we take a project and we clean it up so that we are not running back to Home Depot over and over again. Each of the projects on your list, each of the items that you do, I want you to take the time and put it in a circle. Think about, when I do this project, do I have to run to Home Depot? Do I have everything that I need there? Do I have a toolbox that's well organized? Okay? Because to be able to do what we need to do next, we have to have one thing that works well. And once it works well, then we can take it to a whole other level. So my friend now has a ticket. And this ticket means that she's been able to hire 2 salespeople. She's been able to streamline her bookkeeping because the information on the ticket is in the right spot. But to be able to get an order ticket that actually, because this order ticket has information from 3 different places, to be able to do that, it took about a month of going through each piece, redesigning and saying, what do we really need? What do we not need? We talked about being able to do things from her phone, being able not to do things from her phone. And she ended up having to go back to this low-tech version that has 3 copies to it. 3 copies to it. What was one of the other stories I want to tell here? Oh, there's a company out of Orlando called Soladev. And they're a software development company. And what they did, and this is where the money is they created a tool to help them deal with their clients. So they have an internal tool that they help to create for their clients. And in that, creating that tool for their clients, they used it again and again. And their clients came to them and said, can we buy that? Because the tool was so useful. James, a great example of looking at people come to James and they have asked him about their business cards. So James did it once for somebody, and then he may have done it again for that same person, and then somebody else came to him and said, James, can you help me with my business cards? Okay, the first one was a project. And he probably had to think, okay, how can I best help him? And the second time he did it a little better because he'd already helped this person one other time. And now, James, what have you done with your cards? Have you offered that as a service?
Yes.
So he did it once, and it was a project, and maybe he didn't do it as well. Maybe he had to run to Home Depot. But you know, the first time you do a plumbing project, you may have to go 3 times to Home Depot. The first time you work with a new client, you may have to go through this. And you go, you know, all my clients are different. None of them are the same. But that next time a client comes in, look at it and say, when I met with this client, what was similar? You know, do I meet with them in a similar type of situation? Do they have needs that are the same? Maybe they don't have needs that are the same at all. But what are the tools I use to gather that information from my client? Is it because I just have a conversation with them? What is the same and what is different? We're going to look for the sames. Okay, because now James has done it once, he's done it better, and then he says, maybe the next person that comes in isn't just going to be business cards. Maybe they're going to bring business cards and some pamphlets, okay? Maybe they're going to throw something in there. And he'll say, well, I don't get pamphlets all the time, so I'll do the business card part the same, and I'll customize how I deal with when they bring me pamphlets. And that pamphlet would go in the library, and he would continue to do business cards, and every once in a while somebody will throw a monkey wrench in there, and James, every time he deals with a monkey wrench, he'll say, note, and he'll put that information over here, and then we'll go back and revisit it. So I want to introduce you to somebody, okay, and Bill the Barber is going to go on a journey with us, and Bill has not been, he's not read E-Myth, he hasn't been to any contact sessions. Bill is in his 80s. How old? Bill is 85. He's right there. This picture, let's see, does this work? Ah, Bill's right there. This picture's about 10 years old. It's from, and this is Bill. He started working as a barber in the 1962, I think, 1962 in Ohio. And that's what he did, and that's what he loved. So when he moved to Florida, guess what Bill did? He opened a barber shop. Do you love this? Don't you love that? So Bill opened a barber shop because that's what Bill did, that's what Bill does, and that, at the core of how Bill runs his life, is, I believe, what Bill is. Bill is a barber. And this whole piece of working with people and cutting hair and this barber pole is at the core of who he is. So not only is Bill a barber, okay, this is his barber shop. And actually I didn't put it in here, but Bill's 3 sons, actually his 2 sons and a brother-in-law. Is it 3 sons?
There's 2 sons, a nephew, and a daughter.
2 sons, a nephew, and a daughter are all barbers. They're all barbers. And this is this great? Now, so when we started with this too much technology, could there be? So I have to tell you that when I was first approached, because I wanted somebody to go on this journey with us, of project, process, product. So I don't think we could get a better candidate than somebody who hasn't looked at their business like this at all. But I believe that Bill probably has some projects that he works on every day. And he's probably developed some processes in his business. You know, when I mentioned this to Richard when we first started, Richard was talking about a story in E-Myth about someone who goes to the barber and they get a haircut. Richard, share the story you were telling me.
One of the great stories in E-Myth, the character in the story goes to a new barber and is warmly greeted, offered some cookies and that sort of thing, washed the hair, used only the clippers, and got a great haircut. Well, the time came, he went back. Well, he was warmly greeted, but there were no cookies, and they used the trimmers but didn't wash the hair and got a great haircut. He didn't like that it wasn't the same, so he said, well, I'll go back one more time. And this time, again, a completely different experience at the same place. In other words, he got a good haircut every time, but he never went back. The reason they never went back wasn't because of the quality of the product, it was the method by which it was delivered. He didn't know what to expect when he went in. Total inconsistency. What you'll find in small business, in my experience, consistency is the name of the game. It's part of your branding. People need to know what they're going to get every time when they do business with you. That's what built McDonald's, right? So I think it's a brilliant story to illustrate this. Keep it a known process.
So, so the challenge is when we first talk about project and process, is a good portion of the people that I meet with say, that can't work in my business. My business, everybody is different. My business, things aren't duplicatable. And then, and if I do get them, if we do get them to think that they could have a process, then they become overwhelmed. And oh my gosh, then how do I do this? And it becomes so complicated. Today, what I wanted you to get is I wanted you to look at your business and look at 3 different things that you do and say, how could I make this a better project? How could I have all the pieces in one place and not have to run off to Home Depot? And then I wanted you to be able to look at that and then say, is there anything the same? Is this really a process? Do I do this again and again? And I wanted you to look at some other areas of your life, like James is not going to go longboarding without shoes. You know, Stan rides a bike. He is diligent. There's a certain thing. He takes his bike out. He oils the chain each time. He checks the tires. He makes sure that his pump is there. He's got a place for his water bottle. He does the same thing every time.
Don't forget the water.
You know? And so you do this in your life. But for some reason, when you come to me and you talk about your business, you go, oh my gosh, it's so hard. This is called transferring skills. You know, my brother's an air traffic controller. And so he's been an air traffic controller for a long time. And he said, the problem is that when you don't work for the FAA, there isn't anybody else to work for. You either work for the FAA as an air traffic controller or you don't. There's just a certain principle to that. And I said, well, I think that corporate America would find your skill sets really valuable. He said, what do you mean? And so he's looking at other things, and he's got some hobbies. He's a bike rider, but he's trying to think, what do I do with my life when I leave this? And I said, well, I believe you have the ability to make life and death decisions in seconds at a lowered rate of adrenaline. You are a logistics expert with cargo that you can't put a price on. If you screw up with people's lives, when you're a logistics expert moving people around, if you screw up, the penalties for that are really big. UPS screws up and they miss some packages someplace, people aren't happy. Amazon doesn't get their packages delivered by Christmas, people aren't happy. People don't die. I said, I believe that you have a value proposition that corporate America, other places would find very valuable. So as you look at your business, that's the lesson that I want you to take away. Not that we just did some product today or something and you walked out with some sheets that you said, this is really good and I think I'm going to work on this, and you put them in the drawer for what you might get to this year. Because I know that some of you have been in these classes, heard us talk, said that was really good, took the worksheets home and didn't do anything. I know you did.
Not here.
So I can give you a bunch of worksheets. But I know that if you think differently today when you leave than when you came in, that you're going to look at your business differently and you'll start to make different decisions. Yasmin's going to look and she's going to say, when somebody comes into Comm Center, is it always the same? Does the person at the front desk always look up before they see them and greet them? is that consistent? Is there always coffee over here? Do we always have that little plate over there with those little special cookies? And sometimes there's extra special cookies, but are there always cookies? Yes, Joe.
I just, this is, it's great, and it's something that we need to do, and as business owners, we do have all these situations. One of the things that, I'm just throw this out, one of the things that I get concerned with and get actually caught a couple of times is we tend to see this process, and we tend to say, oh yeah, here we go, here's another product, I ordered something just like this last week for another client, and I'm just going to follow this process. And sometimes the trap is that you get so caught up in following that same process. The expression, the devil is in the details,
Right.
that you get to a point and somehow your mind can easily make the assumption, yes, this is just like the one I did yesterday, and miss a little detail that either the customer forgot to tell you, or you didn't know
Or you
they
leave the-
felt that way. I mean,
leave the
there's
customers-
always that trap that you
the
can get
customer's
caught
name
up.
in there from the last week, and you copy the document.
Right. So it's not. There's nothing bad. I mean, this is all goodness. But I think the other thing that I have to keep on. So I just got caught this week. Something that came out of the blue that I had no clue was going to, and and it just reminds me that sometimes you gotta make sure you know where the trapdoors in the process are.
But see, that you can build those in
And that's
too.
where your checklist gets 25
Well,
miles long.
no,
Because, did I remember to check this one? Maybe this one.
I think-
And sometimes,
You have
it's
warning
just an
signs.
observation.
You have crossroads or warning signs or places where you can veer off. And so you have to know in your process, where are those critical things that I need to look for? If it goes this way here, where is it that these come in? So even though I'm looking for the buckets that are the same, even though Tom's going to identify flash drives, or he's going to identify what these buckets are, he needs not only to do research on this warehouse group over here, but he needs to research what's cutting edge that the warehouse people don't know. And he needs to research, if I'm dealing predominantly with technology clients, right, he needs to do research not just specific to that client, but in the industry overall, so that he can stay aware and stay sharp. There's a place for that. So I don't want to discount that. But we want to know how can I be more effective, more efficient, and provide better value. So I think it's interesting. I shared this with Richard the other day. We have a Da Vinci exhibit in downtown Bradenton at the auditorium. Has anybody been to the Da Vinci exhibit?
It's awesome.
$15 for a ticket. How to think like Leonardo da Vinci. $15 for a ticket. This is the Da Vinci, the man and the machines. So if you thought Da Vinci was just a painter and did Mona Lisa, he was a brilliant, brilliant mind, and he challenged things over and over again, and worked at becoming a whole person in how he approached things, not just as an artist, but as a scientist, as an architect, as a creator. So you'll see things there. Da Vinci inventing the bicycle, a bicycle years and years before, and what are the challenges? And you see all these inventions, and 2,500 of his inventions that he created, we use every day in our lives. And think about this. When the gentleman took us on the tour, he said the only thing that he had for power was man, animal, water, and wind. Da Vinci created a tank. Now we see them made out of steel and they're used as war machines. He created one 500 years ago. 500 years ago. When we think differently, even before, he didn't have some of the things that he needed. You should see the chain that was on his bicycle. They didn't have the ways to forge metal that we have now. So you have these little pieces and they're hooked together with leather. You see this exhibit has only been 3 other places, or this is a 3rd visit in the United States. at Denver, St. Louis, and it's here. It's in the Bradenton Auditorium. It's a world-class exhibit. I would challenge you to go and think about what he did. And then when you look at, there's this great example of for project, process, product. Da Vinci created, one of the things he did was a cam. And then he created a, what do you call it, Stan? It's the thing that turns, it's like a screw, but it's I don't remember what it's called now. But they use it on an engine because it reduced friction. And so you see all these different pieces, and then they show an engine there. And so the gentleman who's doing the tour says, you know what this is? This is 16 cams on here. Da Vinci created one. We have 16 cams in this engine. Da Vinci created this, and he goes around and he points out these things and how somebody who puts them together is able to move things. They were able to take, and he was able to take like a motion here that created energy and to be able to move it into something that went back and forth like a piston. So I want to challenge you, when you look at your project, how can I make my project more efficient? You know, because one project, like one cam, can be 16 cams. One thing that you do for yourself can be sold to somebody else. My daughter is a virtual admin, and she works for a gentleman, and his company is called Productive Flourishing. And so she ordered for me a present, which is an organizer. And she ordered 2 tools for me, so we actually had to put it into a notebook that's this big. It's printed, it's this big. Most people don't use paper because everybody tells them that you have to be digital, but it's like my whiteboard that I'm using in my project. My whiteboard keeps me on track. It's right there. My phone is so small, I can lose track, and there's all these things coming through it. I can control and be able to stay focused with my whiteboard. The other piece is that, so don't be challenged with too much technology. Look for what works for you. Look to make it simple. What's the same? How can you sort things into buckets? And see if you can think differently. This is awesome. When you go to this, because I believe all of you will, we'd love to see what your feedback is and how do you think about your business differently. We're going to watch Bill the Barber on this journey. Some people would say, well, Bill really just needs to get into the 21st century. I don't know. I think that there's something beautiful about this. Now, there's some things that we're going to look at, not only because they know processes. I guarantee that Bill doesn't do every haircut completely differently. He's been doing it since 1962, and he's 85 years old. But so in meeting Bill the Barber, we're going to look at what do we keep that's great and that's legacy. Where do we put technology to help leverage so that they can get more clients? And what is an exit strategy? Bill's family works with him. He's 85 years old. We need to help Bill make some decisions to transition and help his family-owned business, okay? There'll be some challenges there. So I was really happy because Bill is Vicky's father-in-law. And so I was excited that we would have somebody to take this journey with us. So I hope you guys think differently, that you don't feel overwhelmed. And I'd love if you send me an email on maybe something that you thought about or something that you think is hiding in your business that you can change and make a little different. That's it.
Thank you.